Welcome back to another episode of Rain World. Just kidding! Psych, it's my PowerPoint presentation. Welcome to my PowerPoint presentation. Now, to preface, we're going to have a beginning section, which is mostly going to be composed of visual details and random things I've noticed upon rewatching my Survivor playthrough and comparing it to my Monk playthrough a little. And details I've basically gotten no lore out of, but I've wanted to present to you anyway. To begin, we'll talk about the beginning cutscene a little. Thank you to the channel Knight of Iron for providing these wonderful screenshots, and accidentally I've got some of the YouTube in there. In any case, in this opening scene, obviously there's a tree here. It's notable to me because in Rain World, I don't think I've ever seen a tree. So a part of me wonders if this is from a time before the rain, or at least before the rains were as bad as they are. And I'll get to that more in a little bit. I also want to note that in this image, there are 6 slugcats. Some of them are kids. 2 of them seem to have spears. There are indeed 6, and this is the only frame I've ever seen 6 on. And our next slide here, we have a nice little quaint family of 4. Probably the Survivor and Monk and their family. As you can see though, in this next slide, the rains begin. And it does look like we are taking shelter from it. Although notably, something in this slide seems to indicate to us that we've got to get out of here, and it's probably the rain. Because in the next slide, I suppose the day after, we're now walking across. And we're traveling. So maybe our home that we had before was worsening or something. It's also notable that we now have 5, so I wonder if time has passed and like a new sibling was born or something, because in the last 2 frames it was a clear family of 4, but from henceforth it's a family of 5. Except in this image where there are only 4 here, but I suppose a newborn wouldn't have much in the way of grabbing little bats. We of course then get this next cute little frame, which is a little soured by this next frame. Cause look, I'm all so sad and stuff. I think this is the Survivor, I would assume. In this next image, we've got rain again. Notably, at the very least, it does seem like we're traveling in this image. And it feels like we're traveling in the rain, which from gameplay experience, I don't even know how that's possible. If I want to make a connection here, I could maybe say that maybe the rains weren't as bad in the past, and maybe they're worse now. But whatever the case, we are traveling in the rain somehow. And then of course we get to this moment. Very sad, my whole family hanging on to me. I've got a grid-like thing in the sky above us, but that's a natural... That kind of just seems normal for this world. What is notable is lightning, because for the most part, when rain comes, there's not a lot of like thunder and lightning that I hear with it per se, unless I'm in a few specific areas where there are like flashing electricness, like the exterior it would seem. But yeah, otherwise I don't think I've had in-game lightning. It also seems to imply to me that the whole rain cycle seems to be a pretty natural phenomenon, perhaps to the planet that we're on. This next frame shows we fell, as you can see between the frames, and there I go, I'm falling. In Survivor, this is what I see. We land in water, which makes sense, because if I landed on the ground, I probably would have died due to fall damage. This next image I've borrowed from my Monk playthrough, because now in our family of 4, we're selecting on the Monk, who, well, jumps in after the Survivor. Very, very bravely. Also, no idea why this is a whirlpool. Because in this image, as far as I could tell, I was just landing in the water beneath. And then in this image, I'm just landing in the water. But from the Monk's perspective, I can see this seems to be like I'm falling through a whirlpool. No idea how that works. But back to the Survivor playthrough, I've landed and I wake up. And what I assume is this... I guess this is Outskirts because I show up in Outskirts. And that's all I really have to say about the opening cutscene stuff. A couple general area notes that I've noticed. This is just literally a couple. There's only 2. Just little things I wanted to talk about, like what is this guy doing in Garbage Waste? Well, upon rewatching my playthrough, I had completely forgot. This guy's in here. Is Garbage Waste the origin of these guys? And they made their way to 5 Pebbles? Or is this guy from 5 Pebbles and made their way here? I have no idea, but their presence here does freak me out. And the second detail I think I actually mentioned in my last video, episode 37. But this scavenger area in the Garbage Waste, let me get a laser pointer. Yeah, like this scavenger area right here, this is like main scavenger's hideout. They've got all their stuff here. This skull that they hang all their pearls on seems like a more giant version of one of these beasts. And the statues in the background here are the same ones that I do also find in the farm arrays, but I also find in the depths where the ancients are or whatever were once, I don't know. Like I said, I can't really make a connection here, but I can notice that there is one. Moving on, time to look at some random graffiti that I've noticed and drew over. Gotta say, I do love the sheer presence of graffiti in this game and all the little background art. And the first weird connection I seem to have made is that in Outskirts, there seems to be a trend of all these little ghosty guys just in the background of everywhere. One of them's got little X's on it, but the rest look basically identical. Now, my only guess for any of this is that maybe it's like, oh, people who have ascended or something. I've got no clue. But it gets weirder when you see this, which if you look closely, one of these things in the background, I've traced over it for you here, seems to be identical to our previous graffiti. And the rest of the creatures here seem to have of undisclosed number of green eyes with them. No idea what to make of this or if I should at all, but it's something very fun that I found interesting to look at. The next one here is the first, I guess, biggest big art piece that I found in the game on my playthrough. As you can see, I've also traced over this one. I have a lot of reservations about even trying to interpret this stuff because I feel like it's stuff from so long ago that it's not really relevant to me or what I'm doing in the game. Because I for sure know that I haven't seen any big purple blobs like that seem to be shaking around a floppy dumbbell. And I have no clue what these little robot thingies that are standing on or stacking buildings are, or boxes, I mean. Then there's this guy who's just looking at me with its eyes. No idea what to make of that. I upped the saturation on a lot of these. The first one here kind of looks like one of those water wormy fish that I can grab onto and take me places, but also it's definitely not. The second one of these, I just note there's two big yellow eyes. And the third one of these kind of looks like a yellow slugcat, honestly. Kind of like the monk, but I don't know if that's what that's supposed to be. All of these ones I think were in drainage, I think. However, in garbage waste, I love the marking in these ones. My biggest question is that I know since the scavengers are here a lot, I attribute these markings to probably maybe coming from them. As you can see, I had some fun scribbling all over them as well. And also here. And also here. This is probably the coolest. And probably, if of all the art I've seen in the game, probably the one that most directly might have some meaning to it in a special scavenger sort of way. But as best as I can figure, it kind of just looks like a lot of arrows, circles, directions maybe. On the right, there's like a big circle, and inside the circle, all the arrows are pointed inside, and outside the circle, all the arrows are pointed outside. And there are circles outside the circle. And on the left here, we've got a big circle containing a circle, and the outer circle is filled with circles. But outside the outer circle, there are a bunch of circles and arrows pointed into the circle. And I should probably move on before I go insane. The next thing, I didn't really know where to put it, but it's a fun little thing that I did notice and thought I was going somewhere with. And it's the gate symbols. They contain the karma symbols at front, obviously, but they also contain stuff on their bottom there. Like, I feel like it's a great example of combo symbols, where potential meaning could be inferred. One thing I noticed is that almost every symbol seems to be on top of a whole platform that corresponds with its own symbol. And I started thinking that they were maybe place names, so I started like identifying which areas were which. And I thought I was onto something when I saw that the entire thing for garbage wastes was the exact same. But as you can see here, the drainage symbol, they're slightly different. And then not only that, but the symbol used for drainage here is also the same one that was later used for shoreline in my playthrough. Although on my own time, I still might try to keep track of all the gate symbols. And then I remember when 5 Pebbles was showing me a whole bunch of everything on my Survivor playthrough, and I looked back at it, and I realized this is actually literally the gate symbols, the karma symbols. In fact, this symbol should be in here, supposedly, and therefore is the exact same symbol used for garbage wastes here, presumably. Almost exactly. There's these little things here that weren't on the other one, but it's like close enough. I feel cool for it. Anyways, all of that yapping about scribbles out of the way, let's delve into my lore knowledge and theories based on the actual English text within the game. The following lore was provided by 5 Pebbles, The Echoes, and Looks to the Moon. First, I want to talk about a group that I will be referring to as the parents. I have an image of the echoes on the side here because I have a sneaking suspicion or theory, you could say, that these parents who may have created these iterators might be related to these echoes, hence why I'm including them, and also I just want stuff on the screen. The first note I have about them is that they've created the iterators and are their parents. Looks to the Moon says they do not miss the times when their cities were populated, and likens them to skin parasites that also ask for advice and have opinions. Not only did they create the iterators, but they did so as a gift. They view the iterators as a gift to the world. Five Pebbles describes himself as such, and noting that the benefactors of said gift are gone. An excellent segue into they seem to be gone. In the Pearl, they seem to have valued their shrinking population, envisioning the glorious moment when the last of us has joined our most admired peers. They also refer to the world as unable to reach enlightenment on their own, which thus seems to be the purpose of the iterators, or at the very least, to find a way out of the predicament. Because the parents, apparently, have found their own way out, and they just left us here. We also know that while they were in the flesh, they depended on their iterators for water, nectar, energy, void fluid, and all vital resources. Now, as a quick side, void fluid is an interesting one because it's we don't have it in our real world, I would assume. Unless they're talking about oil. But it's interesting because one of the earlier echoes that I had met referred to like going down, seeking the depths, where the ancients are and everything, as, quote, being drawn to the void. And so I might just start referring to that whole area at the bottom of the world as kind of like that weird golden void. And apparently the parents needed that, among other things, and for some reason depended on Five Pebbles for stuff. Now, they also had their own politics and factions. They had a council in which there were houses, and they referred to one house, who may have been souring relations with Five Pebbles, I suppose, as having less than 40 members, yet still having, I guess, a great influence on discourse, I guess, which definitely makes it seem like there were a lot of this species, because I'm just saying the perspective of having seen only 3 echoes total and 2 iterators, I guess, and one of them not even doing that great. So the idea of there being like less than 40 as being a minority is kind of crazy given the world that I am here existing in. Now, another fascinating thing is that they said it is laughable to live on the surface. It's a laughable thought. By now, living on the surface is laughable. Now, as to what this means is kind of just theory territory, but especially based on that like beginning cutscene and stuff, I'm wondering if the planet that we live on is like dying, and it's simply just becoming uninhabitable. Because our beginning frame of the game is a tree, and yet I don't encounter anything like it. And another thing about that is that Five Pebbles refers to like that whole area past the farm arrays, the subterranean, as like going deep into the earth and stuff. And the one thing that's always been weird to me about the game is that there doesn't seem to be like anything natural yet. It seems like my entire world is metal upon junk upon junk. And if I find anything living, it's living within that context. Now, obviously, all of that's theory territory. I don't want any spoilers or confirmations per se of things in the comments, but the storms also definitely are making it seem very uninhabitable as well. And I can't imagine that the deeper you go, the more you get flooded, I guess. Anyways, our next topic are the echoes themselves, the people who they've seemed like they were once people, but seem to have ascended. The first thing I want to note about them, especially after having just beaten the game on Monk, is that they do seem to visually reflect that of the golden void at the bottom of the world, which is very weird and very interesting. Although I guess it makes sense considering they've probably passed on into it and aren't really here anymore. They've found their way out. As I say here, see, they refer to themselves as they are attuned and they've found a way. Now, another thing is that they lament the world that was. The one I met in Chimney Canopy, who I remember I looked, that spot that I went to in my Monk playthrough, that was where I met my second echo last time, but the second echo wasn't there, and I I shake to consider the implications. Now that one there refers to the place as an empty husk of a land, populated only by storms, ruins, and abominations. Again, confirming that the storms and the rain seem to be natural, at least. I mean, I guess it could still not be, but I feel like it disconfirms some of my earliest ideas or thoughts, that maybe the rains were like a mechanism of the structure I was in. But obviously the storms aren't above the cloud layers, and the more we say storms, it feels like it might just be a feature of the planet. Now this one says they were a count of 2 living blocks. They were esteemed by their peers and with progeny. And it's that noble title that they use, the count, that is the main thing that makes me think that these actually might be the species that created the iterators. Because 5 Pebbles said that they are all gone. And these are the only guys who've actually like been to me and said, hey, we've gone, we made it out. One thing I am still confused about is to why these people could pass on, to why I apparently individually can pass on, but our iterators can't, and according to the parents, most of the world can't. So the distinguishing factor there is still something I'm interested in and learning more about. They used to possess vessels of flesh. The second one also confirms that, so that's pretty self-explanatory. And then the third echo I met in my Survivor playthrough told me, well, they told me that we were right to drill through them, referring to all the forgotten civilizations down below. And that line helps make me think that this world might be like really, really, really old. Because like the more you drill down, the more civilization there is, and the civilization doesn't seem to be still seems to be relatively advanced, so this entire setting is pretty far into the future. And now the last thing I want to mention is Sliver of Straw, and I guess the iterators, and like what they're doing. Because Sliver of Straw broadcasts the triple affirmative. They've found a solution, and a solution will work. 5 Pebbles and one of the Pearls both tell us that the purpose of the iterators is to like find a way out of the cycle of struggle and life, I guess. To put an end to it all. And one thing I find weird about that big problem, is that to this day, the iterators still seem to be struggling to, right? Obviously with Sliver of Straw. Sliver of Straw found it, I suppose. But then they died. And it was such a whole ordeal. Like, I feel like whatever these parents were thinking, like, I guess they created these iterators who are godlike in comparison. But these gods haven't even figured out the solution yet. So, like, how is it that, like, in what way are they their gift to the world? Did they just assume that eventually the iterators would figure it out? Or are they just talking about generally? Because apparently because at the very least to the parents, they had to depend on the iterators for natural resources or basic life resources. And so maybe even if the iterators don't find the solution, they're at the very least prolonging the lifespan of life in general at all, and thus are a gift. Anyways, I've gotten off topic. Sliver of Straw died. And as a side note, when I grabbed one of Looks to the Moon's little flies, they actually technically told me that if I were to leave with one of them, then they would die, while later telling me, through the Pearl, it's really hard for an iterator to die. In any case, a lot of drama ensued. There were a lot of different factions, a lot of different competing thoughts about the idea. One group became known as the Triangulators, who I guess are trying to triangulate a solution without discovering it, which is a pretty interesting idea. Others say she just died, others said dying was the solution. They tried to simulate it a million times, but they did not have much success. And that's it! I mean, I do have more slides here, but these are just my personal record of literally everything that's been said. Because in a game like this, it's actually not that much. And I thank you everybody for watching, and I hope my little personal lore recap was good enough. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next playthrough. Alright, what up nerds who watched this video? Straightway after recording my PowerPoint presentation, I went to editing. Not to bog you down with too much behind the scenes info, but I recorded my PowerPoint presentation before I edited episode 37. Now I'm here editing it, and I just realized that these creatures that are here at the bottom, that remind me of the echoes, except the tips of their thing are kind of white instead of gold, and they seem to be busy working on stuff. And they're here in the depths, like at the bottom of the world. My new running theory and this connection I've just made is that these could be related to the species that created the iterators. 5 Pebbles claimed broadly that they were all gone. And if we take that at face value, then that's that. But I wanted to addendum at the end of this video that I do think it's a potential possibility, in my humble opinion. Do not answer in the comments. That these things might be related to echoes who haven't taken their way out yet, which echoes might be related to this parent species who created the iterators. That's all I wanted to say. Farewell ×2.